Beka, just tell us a little bit about your story. Obviously, the story is very much, we're only on one of the early chapters. We've got lots more to come. But just bring us up to date a little bit about you and your story and singing and where you are now.
Okay. Well, my name's Beka. Hello all, and I'm from Nottingham. I grew up in a lovely Christian household. Decided to go and study a vocal music degree, which is like singing in the music industry kind of degree. From there, was in a duo called These Your Children with a guy that I knew from birth, who I love. Shout out to Joe Baxter. Moved to London. We were in Nottingham doing our duo. We had some great opportunities with it, and got to experience some amazing things. And we went on tour, and it was great. Then moved to London, and basically some people I'd been to university with, who are Hon, had got in touch, just Facebooked me and sort of said, Bex, would you fancy doing some BVs for us? Our BV's gone to do BVs for Dua Lipa. And I didn't really know that they were Hon at the time. So I think I even forgot to message back. And so they messaged me again. I'm like, hello. So they were about to release their album. So I started doing backing vocals for them. And then that kind of turned into having a feature song in the album. And I guess from there, I've just been so blessed to get to tour. They're an amazing duo. I just love them to death. And they have kind of been on their world tour. So I've got to go on that with them and do backing vocals for them. And kind of find myself in a spot now where things have slowed down a bit. They're about to release another album. It's given me a bit of space to write my own music. And so that's coming out in a few months, Joel.
So good. Cannot wait. Cannot wait. Now, I saw something on one of your social media a few months back when you and Jordan most recently moved house, and there was a picture of the boys from Hon who'd come to help you move house for the day.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, these guys, they're international touring musicians that like sell out huge spaces across the world, particularly in Asia, and they're helping you move. Like, I just thought that was the most beautiful thing.
It was so beautiful. I think they have an amazing culture within their team of sort of loving the person, loving their team like a family, treating them like professionals, not dictating, the culture, but just assuming that the culture will be soaked up. And so I think with that, they're very loving. And we wanted to surprise Jordan because me and Jordan had moved house a lot of times that year. And I think because I'd been touring, they really knew about that difficulty. So they just came to move us, which was so kind. One of them put up our bed, which is, no one should have to do that.
So talk a little bit about the kind of life on the road. I mean, you guys played some big fun shows, several of them back to back. How was it? What's that like?
I think tour is such an interesting thing. I think you either look at it and think it's incredibly glamorous, or you look and think, I'd never want to do that. And I think the reality of touring, if you have a great team, is that you're with people that you love every day, but you're also seeing amazing places in the world. And I think it really is what you make it. I'm an extrovert, so I am completely energized by people. And so, me and one half of Hon, we laugh because when we come back from tour, our battery is like 100%, and the introverts' batteries are like, minus 100. But I think you very quickly learned about what you need to thrive. And I think it's up to you, as with any job, it's up to you to make sure that you fight for those things, those internal things, whether that's that you need a bit of time in nature, or you need to speak to family and friends, or, whatever it is. You find those little hacks that mean that you're energized on the road. And so I think that the beauty of that is that you can enjoy it for what it is, instead of thinking, oh, miss home, or feel overwhelmed by how much there is to do. I think one thing I love is it really pushes you to be present in the day. We're often not thinking about the next flight or the next show. We're thinking about getting that day done. So there's an immense sense of, achievement, I guess, each day, which is lovely.
So the next step for you is kind of releasing your own stuff. This is Beka taking on the world.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit, why is it taking so long to get to that point?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, because I'd always been in a duo and I'm quite a collaborative person, it wasn't something that I really desired to do myself. I I loved being in a duo. And when Hon started and I was touring with them, I was still in my duo. And so it came to a point, we were in LA one evening and they were kind of asking me, you know, why don't you just go for it yourself? And I think for me, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, I don't see myself as an amazing singer and wanting to push my own music. I didn't have that drive. I think what I've always loved about music is that it impacts culture. You know, you can, whatever class you are, whatever race you are, whatever point of life you are, you'll all be singing the same song. And I think that it speaks into culture really powerfully. So I love that. I love that it empowers people. But I think outside of that, I didn't really want to, I just felt a bit of an imposter, to be honest. I didn't think I was amazing. I want to push myself. But I think God was very kind in using them to facilitate something in me. And also Joe, who I sang with at that time, he wanted to kind of pursue his own songwriting and go for that. And so at a very similar time, we both had this real moment of, I guess, clarity that we can really go for it, you know, on our own. It's been a very slow process for me, understanding this is something I'd like to do. I think giving myself permission. It's quite scary, I think, doing something yourself that maybe for a lot of your life can be quite nerve-wracking. So I think I've definitely been in that space of internal grapple for a while. Yeah.
And you touched on something I think is key there, Beka. The whole thing about that imposter syndrome, looking around and thinking like everyone else like makes it and I don't. Everyone else is that little bit better than me. Like it doesn't matter if you're a singer or if you're working in business or if you're working in accounts or if you're a doctor or whatever you're doing, or if you're into football. Like it's so easy to feel like I don't fit here. I haven't got a place here. I haven't got a voice here. I haven't got something to say here. Just speaking a little bit, Becca, about sort of your techniques for pushing through that, but also kind of where God and faith fit in.
Yeah, I think imposter syndrome is such a real thing. And I know for me, it's been a real journey of probably, I think, first thinking about what my wider why is for my life, like what makes me come alive, what brings me joy, what will I do regardless of whether I'm paid to do it or not. And I think part of that was a love for people and wanting people to know that they can just dream and kick life butt if they want to. And so I think having that wider why really underpinned this kind of relentless sense that whether I want to try and go for anything or not, this will always be something that's important to me, people, empowering people, and also just a real love for music. And so I guess allowing yourself to get back to the core of who you are and have a real settled appreciation for that and kind of rep yourself a little bit is a really important place to start. I think we can often be given things, especially if you grow up in church, you know, you get people telling you, you're going to be this and you can do that. And it can feel like a lot. And it can feel like quite a heavy thing, I think, to carry sometimes. And so I guess for me, just allowing myself to dream a little bit, allowing myself to recognize that anything I want to do with my life is doable if I want, but also there's no sense of intense pressure or urgency behind it, has allowed me just to settle into being a bit more connected to myself, if that makes sense, as a kind of integrated being, that it doesn't have to look a way that it's looked for other people. And yeah, I guess it's also just the everyday, like allowing yourself to enjoy the things that you love. I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, absolutely. And you touched there, Becca, on sort of comparison. It doesn't have to look like other people. Yeah. How do you break that? Because I mean, like in your industry, like it seems quite competitive. Yeah. How do you break out of that and be the person God made you to be? Not be squashed left and right or thinking I need to do that because they're doing that. How do you break comparison, Becca?
Yeah, gosh, comparison's so massive, isn't it? I think it's something that we'll all journey with for our whole lives. because I don't know so much that we ever have a day where we're like, I don't care about the person anymore. But I do think starting with a real decision that there are a certain few people around your life for whom they know you, they know the core of who you are, they can challenge you, they uplift you, and their view and their voice in your life matters. I think starting with those people and then pushing away the rest is really important. And by pushing away the rest, I don't mean saying, I don't care about anybody else, but people are always going to have views of you that are right or wrong. They'll observe you and they'll make their own judgments about you, but they probably don't know you. And so I think, firstly, having that voice of those important people around you to reflect back on how, to maybe ground you again, or to say you are way more than this. You need to believe in yourself. I know that was a big thing for me, having people in my life who said, stop minimizing yourself, go for it. These are things that are in your heart, that you're passionate about. It's really important. And I mean, without contradicting myself, I also think it's quite important just to make a decision to keep on just backing yourself. If you don't back yourself, it's a very difficult space, because you're always on the, I guess you're always on the back foot with somebody else's opinion being able to completely knock you over. Jordan, my husband's been saying recently, and he's been amazing for me with that as part of my core in my life, just saying that, even with something like music, it is not about how well I'm doing, but about who I'm becoming. Also that we're all given something, whether that's a way that we think, whether it's that we are really visual, whether it's that we're an incredible leader, or whether it's that we're very comforting to be around. We're given these beautiful kind of threads in life that come naturally to us, that we're given to serve the world with, and contribute to the world with. And that doesn't have to be in an explicitly Christian way. It can be that you're somebody who is dependable, and that's just such a gorgeous thing to have about you. And so I think being able to be reminded of what is wondrous about you is just such a powerful thing, and that's something that you're given to enjoy and give to the world. It's not something you've got to carry around as a burden, I don't think. Yeah,
I love that. Beka, you're a performer, artist, writer. Why does creativity matter?
Oh, why does it matter? I think you just have to look outside the window, or you just have to look at a human being, or the fact that trees manage to have leaves every year without us doing anything, to know that God is ginormously creative. Everything about us as humans, the fact that we're on this spinning planet that's suspended in the middle of the universe, it just blows my mind. God is so creative, and I think we learn so much about God and Jesus and our full selves through creativity. But I also just think creativity is the thing that cuts through everything, regardless of if you have 1 pence left in your bank account or you are the first lady. You are affected by the music and the art and the clothing and the color and the books and the podcasts that you see. And so I think it's very easy for us to contain creativity as the arts, but mothers are creative, fathers are creative in the way that they speak to their children when they're not sure if they're listening. And we're creative in the way that, you might pair your trainers and your socks. All these different things are something that points to something higher and more. And I think, I don't know about you, Joel, but being in this COVID situation where you're in your house every single day can be very easy to be come in a bit of a bubble for me. You're in the bubble of your own life, and it can be difficult to think that there's anything outside of it. And I think there's something so piercing about creativity that when you open your window and you hear a bird, it's like it just cracks through that mundane normality of life, and it revives you to the fact that there's a life to enjoy, and an entire world out there. And I think that's something that, it's a perspective, isn't it? It gives us perspective. It helps us to be more empathetic, kind of connects us back to, I think, what we're made to do, which is to enjoy God, as well as I think enjoying God is just such maybe an underrated thing in life. I don't know.
Absolutely. Beka, what's the dream?
Oh, the dream. I think that, I would love, on the one hand, I would love to make music that is something that facilitates like freedom for people. And by freedom, I just mean like you want to dance, you're not afraid to look a bit silly, you feel uplifted. I'd love to be able to, tour the world with that. But I think the most important thing for me is just to be able to spark conversation. I think conversation that builds perspective and empathy for us as humans with one another. I think when we are connected to each other and we have a deeper sense of what might be going on for someone else, we are so much more effective and beautiful in the world. And I think, if we can't have conversation like that, and if we can't have an empathy for people who aren't like us, then we lose so much. So I think for me, the dream would be that, just to be able to kind of provoke that kind of conversation and that kind of connection and empathy for people.
It's a great dream. Two more things I'd love to ask you about, Beka. And if you don't mind, it's Mental Health Awareness Week this last week, and we had Will van der Hart with us in the morning 2 weeks ago. It's been really helpful around mental health. I mean, that's been a bit of a journey that you particularly walked with your brilliant husband Jordan. Just speak into that for that a little bit for us, Beka. And a bit about what that journey looks like for you guys.
Yeah, I think, Joel, mental health is this thing that is something we're becoming so much more aware about. But with that, we can park it as, oh, I know this person who's suffered with mental health. But actually, our bodies have physical health and mind health. We have like the gym for our bodies, and our bodies have to have exercise, and it's important to keep them healthy. And I think it's the same thing for our mind. And so I think looking after our mental health is a global, universal thing we all have to do. It's not specific to somebody who maybe is struggling with perhaps depression or anxiety. And I think that's really a kind of really important thing to just start with, really, that it's a responsibility that we all have to look after our minds and make sure that we are able to source our joy and work out what makes our soul feel at peace. But yeah, as you said, my husband, Jordan, has kind of suffered with depression and anxiety for a lot of his adult life, but probably not realized it. But in the kind of last year and a half, 2 years, it's kind of got a lot worse, and he's really, struggled with depression and anxiety. And so for us, I was away for a lot of that time, and it was quite a new thing. In a lot of ways, it was a relief when we found out, when it had a title. But actually, I think also at that point of relief, it's also a release, in that the person who is struggling with their mental health, often then things can get worse before they get better, because you finally can, exhale, and you're not trying to show everyone you're doing okay, but you're allowed to just be where you're at. And I think kind of for the past year and a half for us, it's been building what's the toolbox that he needs, but also I need, for him to thrive and for him to feel, I guess, in control of his mind again, and his mood and his sense of self. And so for us, I mean, you hear it all the time, like people will say exercise, people will say less phone time and sleep, but actually those things are so invaluable from a practical sense. Getting outside, getting 8 hours sleep, having a space where people will sit with you in silence and not try and fix what's going on for you, so integral, and has been for him. But also I think having people who know what mental health is, and know, almost don't have a fear of it, and don't have a fear of the stigma around it. I think we have to keep our mind healthy. Nobody's ever telling you off for not running. It's not an awkward thing to not run. No one's saying, Joel, it's a bit awkward, but you don't run. It's like, nobody says that. And I think similarly with the mind, we're very scared to say, do you know what, I've been feeling a bit low lately, or I get very anxious. But actually, I guess the beautiful thing with being able to be open about that with somebody is that it just facilitates someone to come alongside you, which is such a powerful thing. I think, I guess it's twofold, finding that toolbox of things that don't just mean that you're okay, but also allow you to thrive. But I also think for those who are supporting somebody who is struggling with their mental health, it's finding those safe spaces for you as well to deal with the the ugly stuff that comes out. You know, when you struggle with your mental health, often you can lose a sense of yourself. And so as a partner for me, as Jordan's wife, I actually really missed Jordan, and that was something I didn't know if I was allowed to say. Is that stigmatized? Like, is that okay for me to say that? So I had some really wonderful friends who I could say those maybe ugly things that I was a bit scared to say, and they were just able to facilitate me having a space to lean, which is, I think, also super important, because it can be quite a wilderness, I think, for somebody who's also supporting somebody who's struggling with their mental health. But also in turn, it's forced me to have to look at my mind. And I think I was speaking to you about this recently, Joel, but I think a big thing for me in recent months has been realizing how unkind I am to myself and my mind.
Yeah.
So, you know, I will speak to myself in a way I would never speak to anyone else. And I had an amazing auntie who's not really my auntie, Auntie Pat. I love you. Shout out to Auntie Pat. And she kind of sent a video to me. And in the video, it said, you need to speak to yourself as you would speak to a friend. And this is something I've heard before, but it just struck me so hard, because suddenly in my day, if I, especially as a self-employed person, it gets to 10 a.m. and I've made a plan to start. And if I haven't started by 10 and I start at 9:30 in my head, I'm like, oh, you're such an idiot. Like, you're lazy. You never get anything done. And actually, I would never dream of speaking to anyone like that, because I'd never even think that for someone else. So I think for me, learning about speaking to myself kindly has been so revolutionary. It's settled me. It's like centered me. It's a real struggle. It's harder to be kind to myself, but has been, I guess, a way that I have to look after myself and my mind as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Becca. That's really, really helpful. Really, and absolutely, we need to speak kind stuff to ourselves, and actually hear the voice of God speaking kind things, not speaking nonsense. It's so true. We're going to bring us into land, Becca. Give us like one thought. Where does Jesus fit into this? We touched on it throughout the whole time, but you, life, calling, marriage, touring the world. Where does Jesus fit into that?
Yeah, I think for me it's not a twofold thing. It's not that there's me and then there's Jesus fitting into my life. I think there's something that very powerful that happened for me when I was on tour, where it was just me. A lot of the time people were in different time zones. My support system, my husband, my parents, everybody was in a different time zone. And I think growing up as well in a Christian household and in an amazing youth group, and it can sometimes make you feel that there are certain ways to connect with God. It's your quiet time in the morning. It's your prayer and Bible, and that, you know, the structured ways. And actually, I think when I was and they are such amazing things. But, you know, I think we all find ourselves often in different seasons of life where if I'm getting up at 3 a.m. to catch a flight, and I'm going to be doing that for a few days, Bible time might need to come in later, or, you know, there's real flexibility around it. But I think what really was redeemed for me was the way that God connects with me. And it actually can be in things like nature. It was like above the clouds looking at the sky. Even recently, I've just really enjoyed seeing God as like a friend, not just as mighty God or Father, which are all important, but actually I think he reveals himself to us in different identities at different times. And for me recently, knowing I can come to God and just be like, God, I'm feeling a mess, and, you know, run my mouth off, and it doesn't have to be in this beautiful way of speaking, but actually, you know, God formed me as I am, and he expresses something through how I am, and I can come to him as a friend and as a kid and in a mess, has been so incredible. And so I think for me in this last time and in my life going forward, I think the first thing is just really learning to enjoy God and enjoy that relationship, actually not coming under the stress and strain of some I don't really know the word, but thinking it has to be in a certain way. But even within this time period we're in now, I've loved going out for a walk and really feeling God speak to me through nature. And those can just be in little thoughts. It could be through music, but have him reveal himself to me in a way that I hadn't really connected with properly. but actually really is the way that he often speaks to me and I don't connect with. And so I think, you know, Jesus allows for us to enjoy him. And I think that's been a really powerful thing for me lately. And I guess in this whole season is enjoying him and recognizing that he has his expression to the world, which is completely unique and can be a bit left and can be outside of what we understand as Christian culture. But it's okay. And it reaches people who perhaps don't fit into that. And I think, you know, as with us all, it does take a level of bravery, I think, to trust God that he is expressing himself through you, even if it isn't explicitly in something you've seen before. It might be that you're a street artist and that's where you feel most alive and that's where you feel your soul sing. So I think really being able to enjoy God, but also to know that he expresses himself to the world through me and, you know, my whatever weird ways that come out of my head. Yeah.
So helpful, Beka. There's one little comment about Barry made. He said, Beka, are you on tour in the UK? It's been amazing. Where can people see you? How can they find you? Where can they hear your music?
What a strong name, Barry Boyd. I love that name. Very famous.
He's a strong guy.
He's a strong guy. Well, I have some music coming out in July. So, yeah, you can just follow me in the world. It's just Beka on Toast. Very strange name, but hopefully you'll remember it. You'll kind of see, I guess, the music that's coming out. Hopefully I'll be touring, but I think with, you know, the music industry has been paused in some ways. And I think performance is a big way that it's been paused. But once the pause is turned to a play, then, yeah, there'll definitely be some performing, hopefully. Can't wait.
Well, Beka, thank you so much for coming. Guys, if you appreciate what Beka's had to share, when you give her a little thumbs up or a waving emoji or whatever your favorite emoji is. Beka, thank you so much. It's been such a treat to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just so...
Take care.
Ciao, y'all. Have a lovely afternoon.